Hey everyone, today going to be installing the Push Industries 270 degree chute rotation kit for John Deere 47 and 54 inch snowblowers. Now I've looked through the directions and I've gone through the pieces and I kind of have everything set up how it needs to go at the moment. There are some pieces that we will have to save from the factory hardware to complete this installation. So some tools I found that we'll need. You need a 10 mil wrench, 1/2 inch, and 9/16 wrenches. Then we will also need some sockets. So I've got a 9/16, 1/2 inch, short and deep, and then a 10 mil and a 5/16. I have an impact out just in case. I shouldn't need it, but just to help speed up the removal of the hardware. Then we have a marker, tape, and we're gonna need a little bit of grease. So I will set up the camera here and we will get started. Real quick, before I get the camera set up though, just wanna point out where I'll be working first. On the cover here, removing these 10 mil bolts. They're 10 mil nut on the bottom side as well. And then we will be working on these nuts back here. Those are 1/2 inch. So there is also a V-bar bracket under here. So as we are removing those back 10 millimeter bolts, we will want to try to hold on to that. So now I will get the camera set up and get right into it. All right, we're gonna get started removing the 10 millimeter bolts. This one I'm gonna go underneath just because the hoses. We won't need to keep the bolts, but we do need to keep the nuts. Let's go this way. I'm gonna try the impact real quick, see if we can speed this up. So much faster. Kind of hang onto that V-bar bracket under there too as we're loosening this. Set that aside. Save the nuts. Get rid of the bolts for now. Slide the cover out of the way. Just set that over here real quick. So now I'm going to loosen the 2 1/2 inch nuts right there, and we'll start unwinding the cable. So I'm going to grab the 1/2 inch and get that done. Don't have to take them completely off, just loosen them enough. Get the cable out. Okay, get the cable out of there. Don't need this stuff anymore, throw it off to the side. All right, now Gonna loosen up these bolts here. They're 9/16. There is a 9/16 nut on the bottom side. And there is some hardware that we will have to save from this part of the removal. So I will grab the 9/16 socket and 9/16 wrench, get that removed. Just loosen them all up for now. Probably don't need a deep socket for this, but first one I saw, so that's what I'm using. So on the two outer bolts, we are going to want to save the bushings, which I will show you. Get it out of there. Save the bushing from both outer bolts. Set all that aside for now. We have new bolts, so we don't need these as well, but we'll save nuts, washers, and that for now. Here's the other spacer that we need to save. And get rid of these. Would not be a bad idea to have a couple rags with you. There is grease on this stuff, so your hands do get dirty. Now we will loosen up the back bolt and nut here, and we will loosen up this nut here. So those will all be 1/2 inch. So start at the back, just loosen that up. Just make it loose enough so once this is out, you can pivot to get your carriage bolt out. And this is where the deep well should work, but short socket seems to be working. Heater's kicking on, so I will have to shut that off. Now that the heater's off, we'll keep going. So 1/2 inch, loosen that nut. Set that aside. Move the brackets, remove the pulleys. We no longer need these. We loosen that, so now we can lift this up. We do not need the carriage bolt, but we do need to save the thick spacer and the square washer. Plastic spacer, I guess I'll call it, for the very bottom side. Metal brackets. Just leave them like I took them off, I guess, and set them aside for now. Turn that out of the way, get a little more light for you guys. So we've removed all that stuff. So now what we have to do is we need to turn the mower on, and we have to fully extend and retract and make a mark on the housing where the bolt hole goes. And then once we have that, we will make a center mark. And real quick never mind. I'm gonna wait to tighten that. We'll do that after we get everything back in. So now we'll need our marker. And I've kind of already done this before, but just to show you guys, just kind of eyeball about where center of that hole will be out there. And we'll fully extend it, make our mark where center is at, fully extended. About there. Now we have to make a middle point. So I'm going to put that back, retract that all the way. Now, tape measure. We will measure these points and make a center mark. So I have 4.5 inches. So I'm going to make a middle mark at 2.25, which I've done prior. Now in the directions it does tell you, you'll want your chute centered, and then we will also want to center this as well. So I'm going to turn the mower back on, eyeball this as close to my center point as possible, put the chute centered as well. Go back a little bit. Seems pretty close. So now that we have the ram centered, chute centered, now we can start putting grease on things and getting our brackets and stuff put on there, get the carriage bolt put through there. So I just re-greased all of my stuff the other day, so I'm just gonna go ahead and put it back on. But what you would do is just take your grease gun, put it on here, work it around with your finger, and then we'll put that down. So I'm gonna put this down kind of centered here with this hole. And now I have that down. Oops. And we need this bracket as well. And now we need our new carriage bolt. So we'll need our new carriage bolt, we'll need our spacer, washer, nut, and then we need thick spacer and square spacer that we saved. Put this through your bracket. Square washer, thick washer. And put those together. So now that we have done that, now we're going to need our nylon washers, and then we can start putting our pulleys and bushings on. So I'm going to grab those washers. all the nylon washers, which I put some grease on them a little bit ago. So, just do those for right now. And now we can put our pulleys on and put our brass bearings inside of them. So just for right now, just need 3 out of the 6 pulleys. Place them over top your washers. The big bushing goes in the center, so just try to get this all lined up. So maybe just do it like this. Just get that put in there and just set on top for now. Okay. So now after that, what we have to do is take more of the nylon washers. Put a little grease on them as well. And one thing I did forget to mention, on your steel bracket, you need to put some grease in and around the slot here. So make sure you grease that slot and then put your washers, pulleys, and brass bearings in there. So we need nylon washer in between. And now that we've done that, now we can put the other pulleys on top. One more thing I forgot to mention as well. While you're putting the brass pieces and all that stuff in there, they do want you to put some grease inside and around the pulleys. And then I even just put some grease on my finger and I went around the brass pieces as well. So now put these over top. So now we have those. Now the next step, we're gonna take we should have 6 remaining nylon washers. We need to take 2 of them and place over top each of these 3 pulleys. So 2, 2, 2 washers on top of those. We can go to the next page of our directions here. So now what this part wants us to do is a little more with the carriage bolt. So all that stuff put together. We need this spacer here. We're just gonna set that over top of that guy for right now. And then we can put our top steel bracket on and get everything fastened into place. For this one as well, the directions do want you to put some grease on there. So smear some grease around the slot, in the slot, and then we can place it over top of everything here. So now we will need some of those pieces that we saved prior. Whoops. So we will need to be using the spacers that we saved, and we will now need our new 3/8 bolts. So with these 3/8 bolts, the directions show the inner one gets a big spacer, and then we'll use washer, and then we'll use these smaller guys on the outers. So we'll just go ahead and get everything fished through there. And see where, there we go. So we have new nuts for those bolts. And now the outer bolts, spacer, washer, and a new nut. Now on the bottom side, just make sure your spacer gets lined up in between the slot when you're tightening it down. So you kind of use your finger to help feel, and you'll know when it's in there because the washer will sit up flat against the housing of the blower. Just gonna hand tighten everything for right now. Again, make sure that spacer lines up in the slot. Okay, so I'm going to take another washer, nut, get on the center one here. Like I said, just hand tight for right now. And I believe we can actually go ahead and tighten those up. Yes, so we're gonna go ahead and just snug them up. So these are 9/16 bolt and a 9/16 washer. So we want these snug but not overly tight because we do want these to spin freely, which of course they do right now because I haven't tightened them. So I'm just going to snug them up for right now. And you could use an impact at this point if you wanted, but this is kind of a touch and feel, I think. So that's snug there. And again, make sure those spacers stay in the slot. So that one feels like it's in there and it's snugged up. That one is up in there and it is snugged up. I think I might be able to tighten that a little more. Okay, that feels good and snug. They seem to spin just fine. A little tight in the middle actually, so I think I'm going to loosen the middle one up. I guess a half turn maybe. Seems okay. So we've used our 9/16 wrench and socket to just snug these up, make sure they spin nice and free. That's still a little stiff, I guess. So after we've done that, now we can finish getting our carriage bolt installed. So now for the carriage bolt, need a 5/16 washer, 5/16 nut. I'm going to use this guy right here. So then just make sure you have the square part of the bolt lined up in the bottom of the bracket. So I got it in there and I'm just going to kind of push against it to hold the bolt in place until I get this 1/2-inch nut put on there. And I believe I'm actually going to grab my deep socket for this. Make sure your ratchet's going the right way. I may have used the wrong one actually. I believe I did. I believe that was the old one. I'm sorry. So, 5/16. Get that guy on there. Yeah, that feels better. So the new bolt must be just a smidge bigger or something. Not sure. So just gonna snug it up and give it just a little bit more. But the directions did say that this washer here, it should be able to move slightly, so I should loosen it just a smidge. Might have to go a smidge more. That might be a little too loose. Well, not a whole lot of movement, but a little bit of movement. I believe that'll be just fine. So at this point here, this will be a good time to tighten your bolt back up for that. So again, 1/2-inch wrench, 1/2-inch socket. Get your wrench on there. Doesn't have to be super tight, just snug and a little past snug. Now we're ready to start routing the cables. I'm going to pause briefly so we can route the cables now. I'm going to grab those quick and follow our diagram here. For this part, need the cables. We're going to need our clamp with a 5/16. Let's see, what else do we need? We will also need our 1/2-inch socket, so let's get going on that. Okay. Start here with number 1. We're going to start on the right nut. We'll leave about 2 inches of cable. Oops. So we'll wrap this behind our washer. Just try to pinch it together. Need our 1/2-inch back. Doesn't have to be super tight, but definitely snug it up so you do not possibly lose the cable. So we got our 2 inches sticking past. We will route around the chute. For this part, we're going to take the cable under the wedge on this side. Under the wedge. I also have to be mindful. I do have my actuator hooked up, so I need to make sure that I route this under that cord. Okay, under the wedge. Now on our other side of the blower, we are going to go over the wedge. Wrap around our top pulley. And after we've gone around our top pulley, we are going to want to go down around our bottom middle pulley. And from the bottom middle, we're going to go around the lower left. So fish all this cable through and around. So top, middle, lower. Make sure we're in the slot for the outer lower. And once we get it around here, we're going to want our clamp on. So I'm just going to let the cable rest over here for now. I will grab my 5/16 and we'll get this loosened up all the way. We're going to put this over the center of the hydraulic cylinder. Not sure why that doesn't want. There we go. I've already loosened it up some, but we'll just finish quick. Oh, I had it all the way undone already. Anyways, put that under there. Keep the cable in between the clamp and the cylinder as well. And we'll get this put back together. So I have it, it's a little loose yet. We have the cable routed. Oh, I'm sorry, I went around the wrong part. Give me 1 second. I have to get the cable down a little lower here. It wants to grab the wrong spot right now. Put a little more tension on that. What I'm going to do for this part, I'm going to take this extra cable and I'm just going to fish it underneath here so this part stays down low enough that it will go where I want it to go. So with the chute centered, this is centered, cable routed the way they're calling. Oops. You have to keep tension on this too. You don't want the cable to be sloppy. So now that I've gone around the correct part of the cable, we'll put the clamp together and snug it up. Keep that orientated down here, I think. Cable down where I want it. Alright, so that like that. This in the center. Now I will snug this up. Maybe I will put this back this way. I'll come back to this later and just make sure that it's not overly tight. We'll just finish routing the cable. So after we've gone past this point, past our band clamp, we're going to take it around our lower pulley here. Go around the lower pulley. From this point, we're going to take it around the middle upper pulley. So what's there? After the middle upper, we go around the top outer pulley. So get that wrapped around there. Make sure you keep the chute centered. So now from this point, the extra cable will go over the wedge. And then you also want this to go over top of this cable here. Over this cable, over the wedge. So we've gone around the blower. And now that we've gotten to this side, this part of the cable needs to go underneath of the wedge, and it will also go underneath our crossing cables. So put it underneath the crossing cables and underneath the wedge. And we'll put some tension on it here in a second, because this part says that, trying to remember how this part, I believe it goes over top of your first part of the cable, but it has to go behind this part of the cable, I believe. Let's see. Yes. And I'll try to get the camera in here closer so you guys can see what I'm doing. So after we've gone around this pulley, this has to go over top of this. Go over the wedge around the chute. Once you get to your right side, it will go under the wedge, underneath your crossing cables, but then you also want to route this behind your cable that routes around the chute. And we want to keep some tension on that, so keep it pulled snug. Grab your 12 mil, and then you will, get this tightened up into place. Oops. So we are good and snug. And at this point, we have extra cable. So the directions recommend cutting off the excess, just leaving yourself a 2-inch lead. But for right now, I'm just going to tuck this cable away. So I think I'm just going, if it works for me, ouch. So that actually doesn't work that way. Just gonna let it sit there for now. Can trim that later. This way I can just show you guys what all we have to do. So I followed the cable routing diagram. It does give you step by step in the directions how to do that part. So now that we've done that, yes, it wants you to trim that up. So we have the cable routed and we are ready to test our chute rotation. They do say that it's likely going to be out of sequence after the test, and you'll know because it'll be inconsistent with the end points, or it just won't stop the same on each side. So we'll give it a shot, see how I did. If we do need to make adjustments, what it says we have to do is loosen this clamp up, and then that allows us to rotate the chute left or right, whichever way we might need to adjust, retighten it, and then cycle it again. It might take a few times to get it exactly where you want it. So let's give it a shot. Not bad. That's pretty good to me. It does stop further on the left and it veers down the right. I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to leave it for now. Pretty happy with that. Let's see if I can find a pair of snips real quick, and I'll just cut that end of the cable then. All right, so I found a pair of snips. Just gonna guess and eyeball about 2 inches, so see if these cut. I'll probably have to get something else. The side cutters I have aren't very sharp. Maybe I'll get it. Kind of. If you guys have something else besides snips like this, use what works for you. Almost there, just a little bit. All right, finally. So we have the cable routed. We're happy with the function. Now we will put our cover back on. We'll get the V-bar put on. And in this kit, they provide these spacers, which go on just like this. And they provide new bolts. But earlier in the video, if you remember, I said to save the nuts that came off the factory 10 millimeter bolts. So orientate those pieces just like so. Not sure what I'm... You just have to eyeball and kind of line up where this goes. So I'm going to grab the new 10 millimeter bolts and get those put in. So we have the nuts that we saved earlier. Short bolts go in front, the long ones will go in back so we can reinstall our V-bar bracket. So I'm going to start in the front. I'm just gonna get these actually fished through there for right now. Just set them all in place. Again, long bolts in back, short ones in front. Just gonna hand tighten everything for right now. All So I have the nuts and bolts in place for there. Now we're going to grab our bracket and we'll get this in the back. So make sure you get the bolt through the hole and then we'll get the nuts put on and secure it in place. Okay, so I have that lined up. This part is kind of tricky. Maybe you guys will have a better way to hold that in place. I'm going to try to use my foot here quick just so I can, oops, and now it came out of the, okay, I'm going to have to pause again. The heater's coming back on. So, got the bolts put on, the V-bar is back on, we have the nuts hand tight. Now we're going to take a 10 mil wrench and socket and we'll get these tightened up. I'm just going to kind of eyeball center over these brackets roughly. Slide it wherever you think it fits best and then go ahead and snug it up. Try this. I still have the 5/16 on, we need 10 mil. And I left that back there. Come on. There we go. Just snug, not so tight it pulls through the plastic. That's close enough. I'm not going to nitpick. Okay. We have everything put on. It's installed correctly. Happy with the rotation. Cover's back on. Now all we need is some snow so I can go try it out. So thank you for watching. Hopefully this is helpful to you guys. If you're interested in a kit like this, go to www.pushinds.com. They have them available on their website there. So again, hope it helps. Thanks for watching.